Hi, welcome back to another edition of Pop Stories by Fred Dietz. This is a continuing part of the Uncle Ronnie stories, part of the Bigfoot and Sasquatch chronicles. This one retitled, What a Game. After the main food had been served, eaten, and enjoyed, Uncle Ronnie let everyone know something that got everyone's attention. Late one night, I got a call from the producer of a TV show, a Bigfoot TV show producer. He let that sit for a moment. He nodded his head as if he was answering a question. Yep, I was going to be a TV star. They want me to come on one of their shows. They want me to come and discuss the human view. Someone interrupted him. What did you say? Indignant. I said yes, of course, replied Uncle Ronnie. The next thing I know, I'm driving to a secluded airfield. All of a sudden, a plane lands. One of the biggest beings I've ever seen gets off that plane. He comes over to escort me onto the plane. Once I'm on the plane, we're off. Could you see where you were going? Asked someone beyond the fire. Yep, replied Uncle Ron. So, do you know where they took you? The same person asked. Kind of, said Uncle Ron. But I would not stake my life on the exact place we went to. Besides, I swore an oath not to tell. What was it like? Several people asked. Uncle Ronnie's face became very expressive. It was nice. It was first class all the way. He leaned low towards the fire. I did have to try one thing. He gave one of his patent, and I know I'm going to get in trouble, but I'm going to do it anyway, smiles. I had a drink. The grown-up started to laugh. What was it? I asked them for their favorite drink, said Uncle Ronnie. Well, and what was that? Asked one of the grown-ups again. It's called Foskey, replied Uncle Ronnie. He wanted me to drink it slow. I took a sip. Uncle Ronnie licked his lips as if he could still taste it. What did it taste like? All the grown-ups gathered there asked. It tasted like vodka, with a hint of raspberry, but only 10 times stronger than Uncle Willie's famous moonshine. Uncle Ronnie replied. All the grown-ups laughed. Several shook their heads. They knew how strong that was. Uncle Ronnie continued. He poured himself a glass. The two of us sat there and talked like old friends. We told each other about our families, friends, work, favorite TV shows, food, sports, and so much more. While I drank one, he had three. Uncle Ronnie paused as one of the little ones asked for a second help of a roasted marshmallow. Of course, Uncle Ronnie said. One can never have enough roasted marshmallows. Here, take one for your sister and brother. Several parents looked at him sideways. After about an hour, I could feel the plane start to descend. As I looked out the window, I realized I could have been anywhere. For all I knew, they could have flown me in large circles. Uncle Ronnie paused as he let a reflective look across his face. It really did not matter, for I was in the middle of a great adventure. He smiled at the thought. So I went from the plane to a waiting limbo. I told you before, everything was first class. Once in, we were headed to the studio. I couldn't see anything as we drove because the windows were tinted black. It did not seem to take too long until we arrived at the studio. When I stepped out, I was amazed by what I saw. I was truly amazed. I was inside a large city. I looked at my host and held up my hands. As he said that, he did the same thing at the campfire. My host chuckled for a moment before speaking. The disappear-on towers hide us from prying eyes. You may possibly find a few other things over here that are different. He ushered me into the building. As I walked through the hallways, I must have been quite a sight as almost every office door opened to see me. Well, me being me, I made certain I stopped to talk to everyone. I cannot tell you how many selfies I took that day. Finally, we made it to the studio area. First up, makeup. Uncle Ronnie stopped for a moment as he took a sip from his drink. It was not long for Uncle Ronnie to start again. I had to literally climb up into the seat. You have to remember how much bigger these folks are compared to us. As I sat there, you could see the makeup artist was trying to figure out what to do with me. Finally, the makeup artist asked me to stand up. She put a booster seat into the chair. Sheepishly, I climbed into the booster seat. She looked at me then looked down at her brushes. They were clearly not made for someone like me. She left for a moment. She walked back in carrying a doll set. Perfect, she said. He turned to look at his brother. I have to tell you, she looked like she was painting one of those model kits when we were kids. Remember? Remember how delicate the strokes had to be so we didn't paint everything? His brother smiled and nodded at the thought. He turned back to look at those around the campfire. Makeup was done. I was headed to the set. As I walked to the set, the producer started telling me what the show was about and what they wanted from me. They wanted me to comment on sports. I figured that would be great. He looked at his watch. He told me it was about 30 minutes until the show started. He told me I could wait in the break room until the show. He told me to help myself to the snacks on the counter. Someone would come and get me when it was showtime. I told him great. It's not a problem. Once inside the break room, I did a slow spin to take it all in. Everything was way, way taller than in my house. I was like a young child in their world. I was short. He stood up for a moment. In our world, I'm pretty tall. There, I had to get a step stool to reach up for things. It was like your great Aunt Susan always had to use that step stool to reach the cabinets. I had to use one to get things off the counter. What did they have? Interjected someone from the other side of the fire. They had some fruit, oranges, apples, that kind of stuff. What caught my attention? Cake. It looked bigger than the biggest chocolate cake you could imagine. I just had to have a piece of that, he said with a big grin. He started again. Besides, I had to see if they were better bakers than Aunt Priscilla. Well, chimed in Aunt Priscilla. She was standing across from Uncle Ron as she spoke to a group of ladies. Was it? Ma'am, replied Uncle Ronnie. It was not even close. Hands down, you are still the best. Aunt Priscilla smiled and went back to her friends. The assistant came in to find me with a plate of cake at one of their tables. He smiled, "Showtime!" He led me to the studio. The producer got me set up with a microphone. He showed me where the cameras would be. Then he introduced me to the stars. They were the same ones I saw the other night. I was really short in comparison to the cast members, and they introduced themselves. The one clearly thought the sun and moon were set to his time. There was always one like that in any group. Everyone outside the campfire ring nodded their heads in agreement. The other was a good guy, one that you could talk to. The show started. The two were debating about the big game. Suddenly, without any warning, the fancy one kicked it to me. I guess he thought he had me. I went right into the game. What I liked, what I thought the defense should have done. He didn't know what to do. The other one grinned, nodded his head, and started to talk about the game. That was it. They cut to commercial. Yeah, they are there. They are everywhere. Everyone in the production room was cheering. I could see the producer smiling and overheard the assistant tell his boss the idea worked. As I walked back down the long hallway, all the folks were high-fiving me and smiling. You should have seen... Uncle Ronnie was cut off by Aunt Priscilla. Ronnie, please help Henrietta with her car. It does not seem to be starting. And with that, Aunt Priscilla was gone. I will be back in a bit, called Uncle Ronnie over his shoulder as he headed to Henrietta's car.